Before we jump into today's story, drop a quick comment to say hi, tell me your name, where you're watching from, and let me know if you're sticking around till the end. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and share it with your friends. All right, let's get into the story. My name is Daniel Mercer, and until last October, I had never truly believed in anything supernatural. I grew up in Chicago, studied engineering, and thought horror stories were just that, stories. But I'm writing this now more as a confession than anything else, because if something happens to me after this, someone needs to know what really went down on Black Hollow Road in Vermont. It started with a phone call. My Aunt Marjorie had passed away, and she left me her old farmhouse in a town called Dunsfield. I hadn't seen her in years. She'd kept to herself, becoming almost a recluse, though my mother occasionally sent letters. When the lawyer told me the property was mine, I thought it was some stroke of luck. I was 32, broke after a messy divorce, and barely making rent. A full house in New England sounded like salvation. I drove there in late October, the trees stripped bare and the air sharp with the promise of winter. Dunsfield wasn't much of a town. Just a hardware store, a diner, a church, and a few scattering of houses. Everyone seemed to glance at me longer than they should have when I mentioned the Mercer place. But I ignored it. Small towns always have their gossip. Friends, you enjoy listening to stories, but you don't subscribe to the channel or like the videos. I request you to please subscribe to the channel right now so that I get more motivation to bring you even more stories. If you help me reach 1,000 subscribers, I promise to bring you extremely scary stories with a truly real feel. 2 horror stories every single day. So go ahead, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and now let's move on to today's story. The house stood on the edge of the woods, a tall gray structure with peeling paint and shutters that hung like broken limbs. The gravel crunched under my boots was the only sound as I walked up the uneven steps. The key creaked in the lock, the door resisting like it hadn't been opened in years. And right there, the air in that place hit me, musty, thick, and cold even though the day had been mild outside. That first night, I told myself the creaks and groans were just the old wood settling, but they weren't. I had unpacked the basics, laid out a sleeping bag on the floor until I could fix one of the upstairs bedrooms. At around 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of footsteps directly above me. Slow, deliberate, heavy footsteps. But there was nothing up there. No furniture, no carpet, just empty rooms. I grabbed the flashlight and climbed the staircase, heart hammering in my ears. The upper floor stretched long and narrow, with several closed doors on each side. When my light swept across them, I swore one was already slightly open. The room beyond seemed darker than the others, as though the shadows inside had weight to them. I didn't go in, not that night. But from then on, each night got worse. Scratches against walls, knocks on the window, even when I was on the second floor. Sometimes whispers so close to my ear that I could feel the warmth of a breath, though I was alone. I started recording audio at night, just to prove to myself it was all in my head. The first 3 nights, the recordings were full of ambient creaks and my restless tossing. The 4th night, though, the playback caught a voice. Raspy, low, just one word: stay. The next morning, I went back into town for groceries, trying to push the recording out of my head. At the diner, a waitress, a woman in her 50s, came over, pouring me coffee. She asked if I was settling in at the Mercer house. When I nodded, her face tightened. "You should leave before winter sets in," she said, quietly, almost urgently. "That house, it ain't right." I pressed her for details, but all she said was, "Your aunt tried to warn folks. Nobody listened. She kept the truth locked in there with her." Locked in there. Those words haunted me all the drive back. They were too small, like children's hands, layer over layer, desperate. That night, I dreamed of voices screaming, overlapping until they blended into an unbearable roar. And when I woke, I wasn't in my sleeping bag. I was in that upstairs room, sitting in the rocking chair. Over the next weeks, I kept losing time. Hours gone, sometimes full nights. I'd wake in places I hadn't remembered walking to. I felt watched constantly, even during daylight. Shadows shifted against the grain of light, faces peering from corners and vanishing when I blinked. I started researching the town's records, old newspapers, anything I could find. That's when I discovered what had happened on Black Hollow Road. In the 1950s, a children's home had stood on that land before it burned to the ground in a suspected arson. They never found all the bodies. Some swore the woods themselves kept them. My aunt had bought the land years later, maybe unknowingly, or maybe she knew too much. The handprints made sense now. They weren't trying to hurt me. They were trying to warn me. It wasn't the children haunting the place. It was something else. Something that had taken advantage of them and was now turning to me. Because one night, while listening back again to my recordings, I heard this. A child's voice, faint and broken. "He's behind you." And when I turned, I froze. The flashlight slipped from my hand and rolled across the wooden floor, its beam slicing crooked light against the walls. In that brief arc of light, I saw it, framed in the doorway, crouched low. Not a child, not a man. Its skin was pale, almost gray, stretched too tightly over its bones, joints bent the wrong way. The face was the worst part. It had a mouth that smiled too wide, teeth jagged as if carved with broken glass. But its eyes, they weren't its own. They were dozens of small ones, eyes of children, blinking in unison, trembling with terror trapped inside its sockets. I couldn't move. My body just seized, a primal terror chaining me in place. And then it spoke, not in one voice, but in many. High-pitched, low, male, female, a chorus of whispers layered together. "You live in our house now." The thing lunged forward, but in the same instant, all the lights in the house flickered violently. My aunt's house was old and half-wired to hell, so I expected everything to go black. Instead, the overhead bulb flared brighter than I'd ever seen before, a blinding flash that lit the entire room. And the thing was gone. All that remained was the rocking chair, swaying gently as though someone had only just sat in it. I didn't sleep that night. I waited for dawn, clutching the flashlight like a weapon, and as soon as the hardware store opened in town, I bought a crowbar. I had a suspicion now. My aunt knew. Those whispers at the diner came back to me. She kept the truth locked in there with her. If Marjorie knew what haunted this house, she kept records. Maybe even a way to stop it. It took me hours, scouring the place from basement to attic. Finally, in a loose brick near the old fireplace, I found it. A leather-bound journal, brittle with age. The entries started in the 70s when she bought the house. They began innocently enough, descriptions of renovations, simple observations about country living. Then the handwriting grew erratic. Pages smeared with frantic ink, words pressed so hard they tore through paper. The children are trapped. It's not them. It wears them like masks. It comes in through the cracks at night. The woods keep feeding it. The final entry chilled me. If you are reading this, it means I am gone. I tried to keep it inside the house, contained. Do not let it follow you into the town. The children cannot rest. The thing that devoured them is not finished. Burn the house if you must. Please, don't let my mistake breathe any longer. I knew I had to see the basement. I had avoided it. I didn't even want to open the door at first, but every part of me screamed the truth would be down there. Where else do you bury what you don't want others to see? The wooden door groaned open, and a stench hit me immediately. Damp, mold,
and something else. Sweet, metallic. I descended with a lantern, forcing myself not to gag. The staircase was narrow, the stone walls sweating moisture in the dim light. At the bottom, chains hung from the beams. Not new, rusted over, decades old. But they hadn't always been empty. There were markings on the floor, deep gouges as though fingernails had clawed desperately at the stone. And then there was the wall.
Every basement has patches of discolored brick, but this one, in the lantern light, I saw that it wasn't just stains. Faces bulged against the stone, mouths open in eternal screams, children's faces, pressed into the very foundation. I stumbled backward, my breath choking up in my throat, and then from the far corner came a sound I'll never erase from memory. The sound of something large, something ancient, inhaling for the first time in years. That night, it stopped being content to haunt. It wanted me. I bolted the doors, shut the windows, turned on every light I could. Yet at 3:17 a.m., they started going out one by one. Not flickering, snapping, bursting into darkness like candles blown by some unseen breath. I grabbed my aunt's journal, flipping through frantically for protection, but there were no rituals, no instructions, only warnings. And then the scratching began on the walls. Insistent, rapid, circling me from inside the house. Finally, one word carved itself across the plaster in long, deliberate strokes. Mercer. My family name. The thing wasn't just haunting the house, it had tied itself to us. The morning after the walls carved my name, I tried to leave. I packed my car, jammed everything I owned into the trunk, and floored it down the long dirt road leading out of the woods. But halfway down Black Hollow Road, something went wrong. The landscape shifted. It's hard to explain, but the trees seemed to fold inward, the road stretching longer with each passing second. No matter how fast I drove, the end of that road never came. My gas gauge plummeted, the needle shaking as though it too were afraid. Eventually, the car coughed, sputtered, and died. The woods were silent, the kind of silence that swallows even your own breathing. When I opened the door, the house was behind me again, not far in the distance, not miles back, just behind me, looming, as though I had never left at all. The house wasn't in the town. The house was a trap. I stopped sleeping. Fear was one thing, but the house had ways of fracturing my mind. Every reflective surface became a battleground. One night, brushing my teeth with the shaky glow of a lantern, I saw her, my Aunt Marjorie, not behind me, but in the mirror itself. Her lips pale, her eyes wet with fear. She didn't move in rhythm with me. Her mouth formed words without sound. I leaned closer, my breath fogging the glass. She repeated it again, until I finally heard, not with my ears, but inside my skull. Don't let it out. And then, for the first time in my life, I saw hands pressing out of the mirror from her side, tiny children's hands, smearing the reflection, pushing against the boundary, pushing against me. The glass cracked. I swung my fist into it before it could break, shards spraying the sunken floor. But one piece of glass landed upright, and in that shard I saw a different reflection. Me, but not me. My own face, smiling too wide, eyes too dark. It leaned closer inside the glass and whispered, "You can't run from blood."
I avoided it as long as I could, but my aunt's journal kept pulling me back to the same conclusion. She wrote over and over, "The gate must never open. The foundation holds it. The house is the only thing keeping it contained." But the scratching, the breathing, the way the stone faces seemed to writhe when I dared shine light on them, it wasn't a gate anymore. It was a prison wall wearing thin. One evening while I sat at the kitchen table with the journal spread before me, the floorboards suddenly groaned in sequence, like footsteps moving toward the basement door. Then the chain lock snapped open on its own. The door swung wide, blackness yawning below, and from that dark came a flood of whispers. Children's voices, screaming, crying, begging for help all at once, like a recording of 100 tragedies layered together. And beneath it, a deeper voice, older, hungrier, calling my name. Desperate, I went back to town. The people stared at me as though I already carried some infection. Finally, I cornered the diner waitress, the same woman who had warned me. "You know what's in that house," I demanded. Her hands trembled around the coffee pot. She glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then finally whispered, "It doesn't just haunt Mercers, it uses them. Your family has always been tied to it. Why do you think your Aunt Marjorie never left? Why do you think your mother left town and never came back? They knew." Something in me snapped. What does it want? She looked at me long and hard, eyes glistening. It wants to be born. That night, back at the house, I saw proof. At midnight sharp, the rocking chair upstairs began to move. Not slow, rocking violently, as though someone invisible sat in it, jerking back and forth. I staggered closer when I noticed shapes around it. Children, dozens of them, faint as smoke, standing in a circle. Their mouths opened and they began humming something, low, hollow, rhythmic. The floor shook with it, dust raining from the ceiling beams. The chair stopped, and then every single child turned their head toward me in unison. Their eyes weren't pleading anymore, not warning, waiting. The cellar door groaned open beneath us, and I understood instantly. These children weren't guarding me from the thing below. They were summoning it. I wish I could say I ran, that I threw myself out of that house and never looked back. But the truth is, the house wouldn't let me. That night stretched too long. Midnight came, then 1 a.m., then 2 a.m. But when the clock struck 3:17 a.m., the exact moment the lights first began to die, time reset. The clock snapped back to midnight. The rocking chair shuddered. The children appeared again, over and over. I smashed clocks, ripped batteries out of everything digital, but when the hourglass flipped in that house, everything reset but me. Each cycle, I became more battered. The whispers pressed closer. Shadows took shape in the corners, reaching with long, stretching arms. On the 5th night, I woke to find deep bruises wrapping around my wrists, like someone had gripped me tightly. By the 9th loop, I stopped marking them. But one thing changed each time: the voices. What started as distant whispers now grew clearer, sharper, until on what I counted as the 12th repeat, I distinctly heard the words, "Gate, open, now." Insanity blooms quietly. It doesn't rush you all at once. It creeps in through small cracks until every thought you have is corrupted. I stopped trusting mirrors entirely. Every reflection of my face was just wrong. The mouth too wide, the eyes too hollow, sometimes dozens of small hands pressing into the glass behind me. Worse, I stopped trusting my own body. Almost every night, I'd wake in the basement, standing directly before the bulging stone wall. My hand would be outstretched, touching the cold, damp brick, as if I'd been sleepwalking to let it out. One morning, my fingernails were bleeding. I had been clawing at the mortar. I wasn't just living in the Mercer house. I was becoming part of it. One afternoon, if it even was afternoon anymore, the sheriff drove up. A tall man with a grave face, boots muddy from the woods. He said he'd heard disturbances at the property. I begged him not to go inside, begged him, but of course he did. Men like that don't take warnings seriously. He never came out. His cruiser sat in the drive all night, headlights still glowing dim until the battery died. When I finally gathered the courage to check, the driver's side door dangled open. Inside, the seat was soaked, not with blood, but with water, ice cold, like he drowned sitting upright. The next loop, the car was gone completely, like he had never existed. By now, the wall in the basement pulsed. The faces pressed harder from the stone, their mouths opening wider, as though the bricks themselves were fracturing into flesh. Sometimes when the lantern swayed, I thought I saw an eye, something vast and wrong, peering through from the other side. One night, the children stopped humming, and instead, they screamed. High-pitched, endless, terrified, and the stone split. A line jagged across the basement wall like a lightning strike, and from the crack, a thick black tar oozed, carrying with it the stench of open graves. The journal had warned, do not let the foundation break. But it was too late. Every hair on my arms rose, my chest tightening with a pressure that wasn't physical, but cosmic, like gravity bending wrong. That's when I understood this wasn't a haunting. It wasn't a demon in the classic sense. It was something ancient, buried beneath this land long before humans walked it. The house, my aunt, even the children, they weren't powerful. They were bait, wrappings, disguises. It needed me, a Mercer, to fully release it, and I was helping without even meaning to. The night of the 13th loop, the voice finally spoke fully. Through the crack, deeper and older than sound itself. You are my blood made flesh. Your aunt starved me, but you will feed me. The air grew thick, the tar pulsing, creeping across the floor. My lantern hissed and died, and for the first time, I saw something come through. A hand, gray, swollen, fingers elongated, dripping black. Not spectral, physical. And it reached, not for the world outside. It reached for me.
The hand didn't vanish this time. It stayed, clutching the stone edge of the crack as the wall groaned and stretched like wet paper. Tar ran in rivulets down the bricks, pooling around my boots. The air grew suffocating, hot yet clammy, each breath thick as if I were inhaling through mud. I stumbled backward, screaming, "No, I'm not yours. I won't let you out." The thing laughed, not loud, not booming. The sound was almost gentle, but sickening, like a lullaby sung by someone who despised the child they were lulling to sleep. "You are already mine, Daniel." The basement felt smaller, walls pressing inward. My flashlight flickered, catching flashes of those children surrounding me again. Except now, their eyes were hollow pits, light spilling out of them like open wounds. Their mouths hung wide, not begging, not singing, waiting. And behind them, I noticed something I hadn't before. Symbols. Etched into the ceiling beams and scrawled into the stones, sigils burned deep into the foundation. My aunt must have carved them, maybe decades ago. Wards. The only line between this thing and everything outside. But those sigils were crumbling. Piece by piece, the black tar dissolved them. I turned to run, but the stairs weren't there anymore. Just darkness where the steps should have been, as though swallowed whole. Trapped. That's when I saw her again. My aunt, Marjorie. Pale, shaky, shimmering like an after-image. She stood between me and the wall. I wanted to cry with relief, but the expression on her face froze me solid. "Why did you come here, Daniel?" she asked, voice carrying layers of grief. I didn't know what this was," I shouted. My voice sounded small against the chorus of whispers rising around us. The children swayed like reeds in a storm. She shook her head. Her form flickered. "It doesn't matter now. You can't stop it. Only contain it. And once you do, you'll never leave this place. Just like me." Her hand reached out for mine, but it passed cold through my flesh. Still, I felt her touch. Felt the hopeless weight of what she carried for decades. "You must take my place," she said. Somewhere beyond her words, the deep voice growled, "Yes, he must." The crack split fully. Bricks toppled into blackness that wasn't just shadow, it was a void, as if the world ended inches beyond that wall. The hand pressed out again, then another, and another. The air thundered with the sound of something impossibly huge, forcing its way through a gap too small, bones snapping, grinding, reshaping. And then I saw a face. At least, I think it was a face. So massive it didn't fit within the basement. Blank, eyeless, yet covered with shifting mouths that opened and closed with wet gasps, children's cries spilling from them, stitched together into one agonized roar. Every bulb in the house exploded. The floor shook. My aunt screamed, not at me, but at the house itself. Her voice melted into thousands of echoes. "Choose your blood, Daniel." I realized then she wasn't warning me. She was demanding I act. The foundation wasn't holding anymore. The wards were dissolved. If I didn't give myself, the house, the world would split open and let whatever ancient thing this was pour through. The children weren't summoning it anymore. They weren't even children. They were its playthings, its vessels. It wanted me, and I understood why my aunt never left. She sacrificed her life, her sanity, her freedom to press this thing down. And now the bloodline had passed to me. "No," I screamed, clinging to what shreds of reason I had left. But my feet moved towards the wall anyway. My body, a puppet. The black void pulsed, a heartbeat pounding in my chest that wasn't mine. The face leaned closer. 100 mouths stretched into smiles. Somewhere inside me, buried under layers of terror and despair, I remembered the lantern. The only actual flame I had left. The thing craved blood, shadows, decay. It hated fire. Shaking, crying, I relit the flame. The oil caught just as the hand brushed my chest, cold sinking claws into the fabric of my shirt. With a roar, I swung the lantern into the tar-slick wall. The explosion of light and fire swallowed everything. The children vanished mid-scream. My aunt's image flared, then shattered like broken glass. The thing screeched, centuries of rage in one awful sound. And for a second, I thought I saw its true form pulling back through the void, dragged away by forces beyond human comprehension. The cracks sealed. The basement became stone again. Silence. When I woke, I was lying in the front yard. The sun was rising. The house stood silent. Blackened windows staring down at me like dead eyes. The journal was gone. The sheriff's car was gone. Even my aunt's mirror was gone. It was as if the house had decided to reset itself, waiting again for its next heir. I climbed into my car, keys still in the ignition, tank impossibly full, as if the long loops of time inside meant nothing outside. I drove for hours, not looking back. But here's the truth. I still see shadows when I close my eyes, still hear the faint hum of children at night, just before I fall asleep. And when I look too long in the bathroom mirror, my reflection sometimes tilts its head on its own, smiling that too wide smile. I know the Mercer house hasn't released me. It's only waiting. I drove for what felt like hours, though I couldn't tell if my watch was broken or if time still bent around me. I crossed out of Dunsfield, past the cracked welcome sign, onto the interstate. The world carried on as if nothing had happened. Trucks roared by, gas stations glowed comforting neon. But I was different. When I stopped to eat at a rest stop, I noticed something strange. The waitress never asked for my order. She put down a plate of food before me like she'd been told in advance what I wanted. "You're late," she whispered. I stared at her until she simply turned and walked away. That's when I realized the house hadn't let me go. It had just widened the trap. The first night at a cheap motel in New Hampshire, I dreamed of the basement again. The children's voices rose in waves of pleading, then flipped instantly into laughter, and finally into a sound that rattled my skull. Scratching. Endless scratching. I woke to find my hands raw. My nails were caked with stone dust. There was grit beneath my fingertips, and the motel's bathroom sink was streaked with black tar when I tried to wash it away. I checked out before sunrise. When I reached the next town, 50 miles from Dunsfield, people stared at me the same way the diner's waitress once had. Small-town suspicion, I told myself. But then a child pointed at me in the grocery store and asked his mother, "Why does that man have the other voices inside him?" I dropped everything and walked out. That night, in another nameless motel, the humming began again. Not faint, inside the walls, like dozens of children pressed against the plaster, breathing into my ear, "Mercer, Mercer, Mercer." I punched the wall until my knuckles split, but the voices just laughed. 3 nights later, she came again, Aunt Marjorie. This time, not in mirrors, not in glass, but in the corner of my room. She looked stronger, not pale and fading, but whole, her eyes bright with something I can only describe as warning. "You didn't contain it, Daniel," she said. I sat bolt upright, sweating. "I sealed the wall. I burned it down." Her voice cracked into a scream. "The house doesn't matter. You carry it now." Something behind her shifted. A second shadow stretched from her feet, moving wrong, bending against the light. When I blinked, she was gone, but the shadow stayed long after. By the end of that week, I stopped recognizing myself in reflections. My smile would twitch upward at the wrong times. My eyes would lag behind when I turned my head. Once, shaving in a gas station bathroom, I saw hands, children's hands, press against my cheeks from inside the mirror. I dropped the razor and ran. Sometimes when I woke, I wasn't lying in bed properly. I'd find myself standing, rigid by the window, arm half lifted as if in salute to something I couldn't see. Some mornings, symbols were carved in the condensation of the glass, circles, lines, always unfinished, always waiting. I wasn't just haunted, I was being used. 2 weeks later, I realized I'd been driving without choosing my direction. Every road somehow bent back east. No matter how many turns I took, no matter which signs I followed, I kept ending up on rural routes that twisted deeper into the woods again. And then one night, at 2 a.m., the GPS I hadn't touched lit up even without power. It displayed 2 words: Black Hollow. The house was calling me back.
I thought maybe it was madness, maybe the curse was nothing beyond my head. But when I stopped for gas outside Dunsfield, I froze. The man pumping gas beside me turned his head. It was the sheriff, the same one who had vanished inside the house weeks ago, his uniform damp, his eyes glazed like he'd drowned standing there. He smiled at me, slow and impossible, and black water trickled down his chin. "You left the door open," he whispered. Then he vanished between one blink and the next.
I couldn't deny it anymore. My aunt's last words were right. By surviving, I hadn't destroyed the thing. I'd unleashed it. Not completely, but enough that it could spread beyond Dunsfield. Beyond Dunsfield. And the only way to stop it was the only way Marjorie had tried to stop it. Contain it again. Which meant going back. Which meant I would never come out alive. The drive back into Vermont felt endless. The woods seemed hungrier this time, trees arching like ribs around the narrow road. The closer I got, the more impossible it became to tell if I was dreaming or awake. Shadows moved across my headlights even when there were no branches to cast them. By the time I reached the turnoff to Black Hollow Road, the car died. Dead silent. No warning. It didn't even sputter. It just quit, rolling to a stop on gravel that hadn't been driven in years. I stepped out, and the forest went silent with me. The house stood at the end of the road, windows blazing with a faint internal light, though I'd left it darkened and scorched weeks before. It appeared alive, breathing through its walls, sighing through the shutters, waiting. As I walked up the path, the air grew louder, not with wind or insects, but voices, high-pitched, murmur-like. Children, dozens of them. At first they sang softly, a broken lullaby. Then the words twisted into something I could almost understand. "Welcome home, Daniel. Welcome home." The front door swung open before I touched it. Inside, the children were gathered, not real bodies, but smoke, faint light forming their outlines as they swayed in place. Their faces blurred, their hands twitching like broken marionettes. And at the center of them sat the rocking chair, rocking violently, faster than before. Then out of the chair, the thing rose. It wore me, or something close enough. At first glance, it was my own body, my own face, but wrong. Drawn thin, movements jerking, eyes bottomless black pits. A wide grin split what should have been my mouth, the teeth endless. The children froze when it stood. Their voices fell silent. The house itself seemed to stop breathing. And then it spoke, in my voice, only deeper and layered with 100 echoes. "You finally understand your place." It stepped forward, each footfall creaking the boards beneath it. "You aren't here to fight me, Daniel. You are me. The Mercer line was always mine. Your aunt only delayed it, but you will seal it with your flesh, with your life." The floorboards split down the center, tearing the house apart with a sound like the world itself breaking. Blackness oozed up like blood from a wound, swallowing furniture, swallowing the shape of the children one by one until they dissolved into screams. At the heart of it, the basement wall unraveled fully. No longer brick or stone, but a chasm stretching into infinity. Raw void, stars shifting wrong, constellations bending into faces with mouths open wide. The thing that wore my face pointed at the chasm. "Step through, Daniel. Complete the circle. Die and let me live." Terror crushed my ribs, made it hard to breathe.
but some stubborn part of me screamed inside. It only wins if I give myself raw. If I walk through willingly, it takes everything. But then I thought of my aunt, decades trapped in this place, wasting away trying to hold it down, keeping it buried but never gone. The house would keep pulling us back, one Mercer after another, unless I ended it completely. I looked once at the thing's stolen face, once at the chasm, and then at the single remnant of my aunt, a shard of her mirror still lying cracked against the steps. The reflection showed my face, my real face, tired, afraid, human. And I understood. I screamed with every ounce of strength I had left, grabbed the shard of mirror until it cut my palm, and hurled myself into the void. The mirror caught the fire of the house's broken lanterns, erupting in flame as I fell. The last thing I heard was the thing, my shadow, howling in rage as the fire spread, licking higher, walls collapsing, children's voices rising like 1,000 released cries of relief. I fell through blackness, through screaming mouths, until there was nothing but fire, fire, fire. I woke in the woods. Dawn broke pale and cold. The house was gone. Where it had stood was nothing but scorched ground, ash, and stone foundations already crumbling to dust. The air was still, clean. For a moment, I thought I had won, that I had sealed it with myself, stolen its vessel, destroyed the cycle. But then, I saw the mirror. The shard lay inches from me, unburned. I picked it up with trembling fingers, and in it, I didn't see my face. I saw the children, hundreds of them, and they were all smiling. I don't know how long I've been writing this down. Maybe hours, maybe days. But if you found these pages, you need to understand. Burning the house didn't end it. It's inside me now. And sooner or later, it's going to find you too. That's the dark resolution to Daniel's story. Sealing the entity by sacrifice, but revealing he has only become its new doorway.
My name isn't important. Let's just say I'm a deputy historian for Windsor County, Vermont. 3 months ago, a box of documents turned up during the demolition of an old storage unit in Dunsfield. Inside were letters, photographs, and a handwritten manuscript signed by Daniel Mercer. I almost dismissed it. Horror ramblings, I thought. But the more I read, the less I slept, because he didn't just write about the Mercer house. He described details about the property, burned timbers, foundation markings that match records in the county archive too precisely to ignore. The house burned down in 1984, long before Daniel ever claimed to inherit it, and yet his manuscript was dated 2019. That should be impossible. I've tried not to obsess, but I keep coming back to one particular page. The ink is smeared, the handwriting erratic, but the words repeat over and over. It's not the house, it's the bloodline. Blood is the key. Blood opens the gate. What disturbs me most is that the paper itself isn't aged. Not at all. It looks as though it was written last week, not years ago. And when I touched the corner of one page, I felt wetness, tar black. It left no stain, but the smell lingered for hours. Last week, while walking home from the archives, I passed the churchyard. A boy was sitting beneath the maple tree, maybe 7 years old, pale, thin, quiet. As I walked by, He looked at me and said in a voice too calm for his age, "You've read his words, haven't you?" I froze. My throat dried. "Don't worry," he added, smiling. "When the house comes back, you'll go too. All readers do." He blinked, and for half a second, I saw dozens of smaller eyes inside his own. Then he was just a boy again, swinging his legs. But when I glanced back, he was gone. I'm not Daniel Mercer. I'm not tied to his family. And yet every night since opening that box, I hear the same lullaby he described, the hum of unseen children circling outside my apartment door. I moved the box to the archive's secured storage, but the voices followed. Yesterday morning, I woke to find black stains spreading beneath my bedroom window. I think I understand now. Daniel didn't destroy the house. He seeded it. Not in one place, not even in one family. Wherever his words are read, the gate learns a new name. If you're reading this, it's already looking at you. Welcome to Black Hollow. I swore I was done writing, but tonight the voices won't let me stop. The manuscript doesn't stay in the archive. No matter where I move it, county storage, bank vaults, even burning a copy, there's always another set of pages waiting on my desk the next morning. And each new version adds more. Words that weren't there before. Sometimes whole paragraphs I never saw Daniel write. The last page now carries my name. Yesterday afternoon, county workers cleared the old Mercer land again. They were supposed to level it for a new housing development. 3 hours later, all 7 workers resigned. No explanation, only silence. I drove past what should have been level ground, but there was a house standing there. Not the same as before. Different angles, different window placement, but somehow still the same. A living continuation of the Mercer place. The foundation wasn't stone anymore. It was wood, warped, black as tar. And when the wind shifted, I swear I heard children singing. News travels fast in small towns. Since that day, strange reports have poured in. A hiker in Albany disappeared after saying she found an old farmhouse that wasn't on any map. A family passing through claimed their daughter had started humming a tune they'd never taught her. When asked where she heard it, the little girl said, "The man in the mirror taught me." I feel sick as I write this, because I know these are not coincidences. The thing Daniel tried to seal is no longer tied to one place. It is making houses of us. I see now that Daniel never had a choice. Neither do I. Neither do you. The cycle never ends because it isn't about surviving, it's about infecting. Every telling of the story opens another crack. Every reader is a brick pulled loose. And through those cracks, the thing smiles. I've tried to stop reading, tried to stop writing, but the words keep bleeding into my hands, guiding the pen. And if I hesitate too long, I hear breath at my ear, whispering the same phrase over and over. Finish it. Tomorrow, the council meets about the land. Some will argue to demolish the ruins. Others will propose fencing it off. But it doesn't matter what they decide, because tonight I looked out my apartment window and saw something that steals my last thread of hope. The Mercer house is across the street. Leaning, waiting. Its windows glow like eyes searching for me. I don't know how long I can hold it back, or if writing this is pushing its reach further. But if you've come this far into my account, If you can hear the hum behind your wall as you read these words, you already know the truth. Black Hollow Road isn't in Vermont anymore. It's wherever you are standing right now. There's no more running, no more denying. The Mercer blood didn't just call the thing, it carried it. Daniel thought he burned it. I thought I was only retelling his nightmare. But the truth is worse. The house was never meant to stand still in one place. It needed movement, a way to travel, a way to seep from soil into story, from foundation into memory. And we gave it what it wanted, a voice. It doesn't haunt wood or stone anymore. It haunts the telling. The Mercer house will be rebuilt again and again, wherever its story is heard. Whoever allows the words to crawl beneath their skin. You don't have to step inside it. You already have, just by opening these pages. So this is my last record. I am leaving it here unfinished. The humming is at my door, small hands pressing against the wood, eager to let themselves in. When it breaks through, I won't scream, I won't run. I'll let the house take me, because perhaps the only way to quiet it for a moment is to feed it a little longer. And then, when it is done with me, it will come looking for you. Because Black Hollow Road never ends. It only waits, turning, bending, until you see the house waiting at the edge of your street, waiting for you to come home.